Today we're going to talk about, like I said, inclusive education. When we talk about education, we generally know that, learning is something that is or should be accessible to everyone. Everyone has the right to education and everyone has a capability to make progress. So we will understand these statements today more deeply by talking about inclusive education, what that means, how we can create this environment, how this will really benefit the classroom as well. Our speakers today will guide us with the knowledge and understanding that can equip educators, students, as well as parents in creating this holistic environment for our students. Right. So before we begin and before we just really get deep into the discussion, I would like to really introduce the speakers today. We have Miss Sulekha here. We welcome you. Thank you for joining us today. She is a special educator with a diploma in special education in autism, and she's presently a mentor at Cadre. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. It is a school for autism. And she is also a mother of teenage daughter with autism. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for giving us your valuable time. We
My
welcome you.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Right. We also have our alumni, Mr. Jason, who is, who has been part of our school, Trivandrum International School. He has done his BSc in psychology from City College in New York and is currently working as a disability analyst. Thank you for taking your time and joining today's discussion, Mr. Jason. We welcome you.
Pleasure to be here.
Right. We also have a third speaker. I will, if the participants will be patient enough and give me a minute to just check, I will just make sure that he is facing no issues in connecting with us. Please give me a minute and I'll just come back. Our third speaker, Miss Anuja, is almost here. She is joining us. Please forgive the technical difficulties that, can occur. So Miss Anuja is a speech and language pathologist, and she has an experience of 13 years working as a speech pathologist as well. And she's also working at Cadre currently, like I said, which is a school for autism. So as she joins, I would ask, the speakers to tell us a little bit about themselves. So we'll start with Ms. Sulekha. Please tell us about yourself and your work, and how did you, get into this field that you're in right now?
Good afternoon, Asta, and good afternoon to all of you. I am presently working as special educator at CADER, and I'm also the coordinator for the Department of Special Education, and I'm the mentor of the pre-teen group of students there. That is about my career profile right now. Um, I kind of stumbled into this whole world of special education much later in life, and it was not a regular conscious decision that I took during my college days. It happened much later in life when my daughter Ruby was diagnosed with autism. And till then I was an English teacher, but I would say with that teaching background, it was easy for me to transition from being a regular classroom teacher to a special educator, which is again a teacher educating children with autism. So that is how I'm here right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, your journey from your teacher as, where you were teaching English, and now, you are here. I will definitely come to, how you feel about the experience and if it's any different. But before that, I would like Mr. Jason to introduce himself and just tell us about, again, yourself. Tell us about your responsibilities of, the kind of work that you're doing, what inspired you to choose the field, etc.
Hi. So yes, I graduated Trins in back in 2011, and I kind of also stumbled into my profession as well.
Miss
So
Sulekha, may I just 1 second? May I
no
ask you
problem.
to mute yourself so that we can hear him better?
So
Thank you.
basically, I worked in the emergency department, the children's emergency department, as a medical scribe for a couple of
Right,
years.
right,
And then I learned a lot of skills of like medical terminology, physical ailments, even psychological, psychiatric issues as well. And so because of that, I was able to use that information and knowledge that I gained into my new work, which is as a disability analyst. Um,
right,
Basically, it has two components, either physical or mental disabilities. And then I, as the adjudicator or examiner, have to look at the medical evidence and make a determination if somebody is eligible for disability benefits or not. So
right,
it's good work. I like it. You really do make a difference. You do help people out that need the help.
right,
And I'm proud of the work that I do for the government agency that I'm part of. So.
right, right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jason. That really, is interesting to hear about, and we will get into details of, how your work really is beneficial and is helping, the field, is helping the people and the field where, everyone can feel a part of the community. So we have Miss Anuja here. Um, as a third speaker. Like I mentioned, that she has been working as a speech and language pathologist who has an experience of 13 years. Miss Anita, welcome. I'm not able to see your video. Please, would you switch on your video, Miss Anuja? Okay, till she comes back and we are able to hear her, I will, move to Miss Sulekha, as you were telling us about how, you were an English teacher before and now you, teach kids who have autism and you're working in this school as a mentor. How is that experience like? It was there, was it challenging? How do you like it so far? Is it any different? Please tell us.
Yeah, it is definitely different because it's
Right,
a lot more of involvement than when compared to regular classroom teaching. Because in a regular classroom, you have a set curriculum for all the students. Here, that
right,
doesn't work. Every child has a different IEP, an individualized education plan. You have to
right,
set goals for each child. It's not
right,
common for the IEP of one child is totally different from that of the other.
right,
So in that way, definitely it is very engaging and a lot of involvement is expected. So that is
right.
one major difference. But it is a very rewarding profession, so so you can't complain as well.
Right. So that I think, like you said, it's the rewards that matters, and that sometimes is that takes a power over the challenges that we may face sometimes. So would you tell us, what, coming to the topic at hand, what really is inclusive education, and is that different from special education?
Inclusive education, basically you are integrating the child with special needs into a regular classroom setup with,
Right.
we don't say the word normal, we say neurotypical children.
Right.
So that is what basically inclusive education is. And it is not just accommodating, physically accommodating the child there. It goes beyond physically accommodating the child there. You have to
Right.
make plans for the child. It's not like engaging the child. The child has to be educated. So inclusive education, I would say in India probably it's still taking baby steps, but it's kind of moving towards the right direction, at least with a few
Right.
institutions.
Right. I would just thank you so much for that. I would just check with Miss Anuja. Okay,
Hello.
great. Thank you. So your audio is working now. We welcome you. Thank you for being here with us. Please tell us a little bit about the kind of work that you do and how you got into this field.
Okay, first of all, a very good evening to all of you, and thanks for inviting for the webinar. Now, I am basically a speech language pathologist, and I have been working across the ages for all kinds of speech language and communication difficulties. And then I thought it would be great if I can specialize in the childhood communication, speech language, and learning problems, so that this is the age where we should give them the right kind of input. Even the parents need to be given the right kind of direction, and which paves way for the later development. So that made me stick on to this area. And now at Cater, I'm specializing more into the communication problems of autism spectrum disorder children. And I really, really love working as a speech language pathologist.
So, sorry, my mic was on mute. So that sounds really inspiring, and that sounds, it really seems like you're really passionate about the kind of work that you do. Coming to understanding the field better and coming to understanding inclusive education a little better, what is, who are the students, who are the children that are, or that who would be a part of inclusive education when we talk about it?
Inclusive education, theoretically, if we are saying all children should be put to inclusive education, because they should be given the opportunity to explore the environment around them, to meet their normally neurotypical peers. Their peer models will be great, and they will be developing a good amount of self-esteem. Even the socialization skills will improve. And in the other way also, the neurotypical kids, they can be more of compassionate towards the kids who are having difficulties, and also we can create a tolerant society thereby. But if you ask me, is inclusion possible for everyone? Yes, there are a certain percentage of children whom we will not be able to provide inclusive education successfully. For example, if they are severe cerebral palsy, bedridden kids, or severe intellectual disability. So in that cases, inclusion may not be that effective.
Right. But okay, so there is definitely very attentive needs of some of the students that would path them from being part of inclusive education. But for the students who are in inclusive education, do you feel all of their needs can be met by such a classroom setting, or they would still need some kind of extra help, or what is your take on that?
Yeah, as Ms. Suleka was referring to, it is really, we are on the baby steps into inclusion. And inclusion, as we speak like this, it is not a very easy task to cater the various demands of a child with special needs. It is really, really important when you come into a classroom. For example, if it is a hearing impaired child, we may have to modify the all the infrastructure inside the class, including the furnitures, to reduce the background noise. Or we may have to install some kind of an assistive device inside the classroom to cater their auditory needs. And for children who have severe communication deficits, who are non-verbal, we may need to have them accommodate their augmented alternative communication devices like speech generating devices. So all these should be there. And also for a teacher who is teaching in a group of 40 or 50, as we see in the regular education classrooms, or even if it is 30, it is difficult to cater the individual needs of a particular child all throughout the day. That is going to be difficult. So inclusion has to happen, but there are a lot of hurdles that we have to pass through.
Right. So thank you so much for that, input, and just letting us know, or, even though we do talk about inclusive education, there's still, a lot of progress and a lot of, nuances that we still need to keep in mind. So Miss So, Lekha, this question is to you then. How do we incorporate these inclusive practices? And, how do our parents can become involved? And, are there ways to identify that a student or a child may need this early intervention or, something like that?
I think it all starts with sensitizing the preschool level teachers and the staff
Yeah,
in the preschool level more than anything else. Even much more than having infrastructure and having all the professionals on board. If the
right,
preschool level teachers and staff are not trained to look out for those red flags, like why isn't this child smiling at others, or why is he
right,
aloof all the time, or why is he so restless all the time. So that is very important, and many cases are reported. The parents are informed by the preschool teachers that there could be something, a
they
skill
need to,
deficit in your child. You need to start some kind of early intervention. So that is
right,
where we need to work a lot.
right. And is there something specifically that the parents can do?
Parents of special needs children, or
Yeah, yeah, or like, parents, how do they sort of keep an eye out or to sort of, understand their child better to just, know what their needs are?
identifying the disability or problem with your child, uh,
Right,
it can vary from household to household, because in some cases parents might not even be aware of such a disability as
right,
autism or ADHD present. They would have heard
right,
the name, but they would never expect it to happen to their child, so they just
right,
take it lightly. So
right,
I think generally there has to be an awareness, along with sensitizing the staff in the general community, that
right,
awareness has to come that this can happen to anybody.
right,
And nowadays there are a lot of assessment tools also that are available.
yeah,
Things like MChat, which is a modified checklist for autism in toddlers, which can be
right,
administered between the 16 months to 30 months. But the only
right,
thing, it has to be done by a trained psychologist.
right, right.
So there are a lot of assessment tools that can help and find out whether the child qualifies for an early intervention early in life.
Right. So thank you so much. I think that would definitely help our group of teachers as well as parents to, like you said, sensitize themselves and become more aware about, something like this, and, to give their child the support that they need. Mr. Jason, coming to you and the kind of work that you do, we've talked about the academic support, but the students or the children with disability definitely need social emotional support as well. And, so how would you suggest, that is given to them, or how would you help us understand their needs apart from academics, and, how we can move towards that?
Right. I mean, I think it was touched upon before by the other speakers, but I think really starting with the parents and the environment.
Right,
I think one of the interesting parts of my job, well, one of the parts of my job that I actually find difficult is when I'm dealing with a pediatric case. It's really about managing the parents' emotions rather than the child's emotions.
right,
So one of the difficult parts is that when I have to make a determination and I've determined the child not disabled, the parents don't really see how that's actually a good thing, and
right,
how it's actually a good thing that I've made that determination, because now that child is able to, partake in normal school activities, or if they're not able to work, then they could do simple tasks. So I think really it has to start with the social environment that the child is a part of,
right,
and once parents sort of have that autonomy to like give their child, that's really where it starts. Because even in the ER with pediatrics, when I was working, um, a lot of the psychiatric cases that came through, it really was parental sort of anxiety about the situation more
right,
than the child's own actual like pathologies.
right,
It was really about the parents. So it
right,
has to start from there.
right. And when we talk about, like you said, we have to look at the parents and to sort of help them understand what's happening so that they can become more equipped with handling the situation. So I when I'm talking about this kind of support, I've heard of terms like accommodation and accessibility. Would you help us understand these terms a little better? Especially when it comes to supporting these kids.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, definitely, like within the context of education, that with special needs, especially, there needs to be accommodations made, especially in the education
Right,
setting. But that also, like, there's two fronts, right? So there's the emotional and sociological side of it, and then there's also the
right,
actual learning environment, right?
right,
So within the context of the learning environment, it's important that special needs are accommodated for, so that
right,
the kids can learn as much as they can. And
right,
especially, I think it's important. I think it was mentioned by one of the other speakers that they're with neurotypical kids, so they're not
right,
just separated out. And I
right,
think that that's important because it allows for more social interactions between two disparate groups.
right,
And so then having that accommodation within the context of a diverse classroom setting, I think is important for both not only the neurotypical kids, but also the neuroatypical kids, so
right.
that they can have more like interactions with each other, they can understand each other better. So I think, that's all important within that context.
Right. Thank you so much for helping us understand that. So coming to the classroom setting, that you guys have talked about, that they, especially when they are the two kinds of students, the neurotypical as well as neuroatypical students, they're together in that one classroom. Um, Miss Anuja, this question is to you then. If there is that one classroom, which we call the inclusive classroom, how are we really creating it? I've heard that sometimes you modify the curriculum based on the needs. You also change the grading methods for some of the students. So, how does that really work? And, how can our teachers really, would you just give us, useful resources that our educators and even parents can just sort of look more into to creating that kind of environment?
Yeah, the inclusive classrooms, we have to make a lot of modifications, as I have told,
Yeah,
right from the infrastructure of the class to the curriculum to the professionals. So
right,
every area we have to make them prepared for an inclusive classroom. So first of all, we have to make the class friendly for the special needs child who is going to come inside the classroom, like
right,
helping him arrange all the needy items like the speech generating devices, or the if they are doing typing, they can't write. Some students may be interested in
right,
typing, so we should give them the area for that also. So all this has to be all these circumstances has
right,
to be arranged. And also, we in regarding the curriculum, we know all special needs children may not be able to cooperate, or they may not be able to cope up with the general education curriculum. So that time
right,
the teacher may need to modify the curriculum, but it is individualized. Few of the kids, we give them a individualized education program, even though they are in the general education classroom.
right,
So based on the IEPs, and a few kids who can cope better, they may not have an IEP. Even still, they will need a modification in the curriculum. So how we make this modification in the curriculum is like, it can be the general education teacher with the special education teacher, along with the other professionals like the psychologist or the speech language pathologist or the occupational therapist, whoever means gives the assistance to the child. All of them can join hands and work out for the curriculum, which all areas
right,
has to be taught, which all areas has to be reduced. That can be a group decision, that would be better. And for regarding the grading also, we know we cannot grade all students alike. Like Einstein has has told us we shouldn't put a fish on the land and ask it to swim and grade it. So special needs kids, though we feel they are special needs, some of them have a very high IQ, some may be a lower functioning. So we have to cater all of their needs. So the grading should be also according to that, because the parents take a lot of stress in teaching them all these concepts. So if they are grading, going with the general education grading system, always they'll fall in a D or an E, and it is always demotivating for the child as well as the parent. So in this area also, we don't have a general or an accepted standardized grading system like that. Depending on the children who are admitted in a particular school, they can make a grading system of their own. That is what we have seen. So in that grading system also, it should be a group of people who are the decision makers, so that we can go with the right, give the right kind of grading for the child. And also sometimes parents can also be involved in this formulation of this grading system. And parents should be well aware of the type of curriculum modification that is made, and also the type of grading that is given to their child first itself. And also throughout the academic year, if they can follow the same kind of modification, same kind of grading system, that will also help. If you are keeping on changing, parents will have an issue, even the child will have an issue. And also while teaching, we have to take into account the modality, that is which is the most comfortable modality for a child. Few of the kids are, even in the regular school children, neurotypical children, there are differences. Like some of them will be auditory learners, some of them will be visual learners. Although most of the human beings are visual learners, few are there who are auditory. Few will in the special needs children, some of the kids may be kinesthetic learners, because the movements give them more, help them memorize it. And so this also has to be taken into account while teaching them. So for few kids, when we are teaching, like reading the lesson teaching, it'll be difficult. So we can make a story out of it, make a visual concept out of it, and then teach them accordingly. So all these kind of modification will help the child cope up better in a very good environment, like an inclusive classroom.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that was really useful for all of us to just understand, we have to look at, the learning style of the student, of the child. We also have to look at, making a standardized, way to just sort of measure their progress as well. So I think that will definitely be useful and helpful for our teachers there. Coming to how we are making the inclusive, setting for the students to benefit, it is important to address that, how are the students also feeling in these inclusive programs as well. So Ms. Sulekha, I would like you to answer this question for us. How do you think we can help, students, the neuroatypical students to feel a part of, the inclusive programs, and, how do you think we can increase their sense of control and their sense of, belongingness there?
Actually, in the case of autism, this can be a little tricky because their major area of impairment is in the areas of social interaction and social communication. So unless they are in the mild end of the spectrum, or unless they're very verbal, we are not going to get a response from them and know for ourselves whether they are happy with the whole thing or not. But definitely, their feelings would be reflected in their behaviors also. So, as a whole, along with the classroom teachers and the students together with the peers, they can foster that sense of belonging in the child, and that would help the child a lot. And even at a very young age, we can attempt to probe deep into the child and find out what his core strengths are. You might be lucky, and you might be able to find something in the child which can be channelized in the right direction and taken forward for a successful adulthood in the child. So that can help.
Right. And you've talked about how the people around the child can really come together and help them make feel part of the community. So when we're talking about inclusive classrooms, or when we're talking about inclusive education, obviously, like you said, does benefit the students who are in the program, but does it benefit the classroom also as a whole? What about the students who are neurotypical? How does that work for them? And what are the things that
That
they're
is a
gaining?
very good question, because I think probably even the parents would feel, what is this child doing in my son's classroom or my
Right,
daughter's classroom? Why is he
right,
here? I think definitely over a course of time, the classroom as a whole would develop favorable attitudes towards the peer who is differently abled. And I can't even think of a single reason why that child shouldn't be there.
right,
And, you know, it will for sure develop feelings of empathy and being responsible and being good to another person
right,
who needs a little extra help than
right,
ourselves. And that is what education is all about. Of course, we
right,
want our children to be successful in life, but we can't overlook all these factors as also. And
right,
even in the long run, with a school like yours, the alumni is like CEOs of big companies and in very influential positions. So
right,
even at that stage, the values that they've learned from the school um, would help them contribute in a good way to a society that is less privileged. Um,
right,
Not just special needs, can be a society in a lower socioeconomic status, or
right,
with lesser opportunities or privileges in life. So
right.
that is a definite, you know, it has to be, as I said, I can't find one single reason why that child should not be there in the
Sure.
classroom.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that was a wonderful answer for us to just as human beings, when we're talking about education, um, that's the responsibility of education, to just teach us core values like empathy, understanding privilege, and then, just give us that sense of, responsibility, and then, be the change makers and decision makers. So that just sort of helps our students, go further into that direction. Coming to Mr. Jason, the kind of work and the experience that you have, you said you work with both the children as well as adults. How does this really transition into, the adult life? What are some essential vocational skills or like communication skills that we definitely need to be teaching in the education system to just sort of increase their independence, their learning, their productivity as an adult?
Right. The short answer is that it's difficult.
Right,
But the longer answer is that it's complicated. So it's interesting because sometimes we'll find that, especially with people with autism when they're kids, we have specific criteria that we use within the
right,
context of that to see if they qualify for disability benefits. But
right,
we also find that when they become adults, and in our purposes, it's greater than the age of 18, that it's a new set of criteria and they might not meet those set of criteria, so they could do like more simple tasks.
right,
So that's kind of where I do see, and obviously this is on a spectrum. So you do
right,
have people who are able to do, are high functioning and are able to do more than simple tasks and are able to do certain types of work. But on the spectrum, you also see people who are then able to do simple tasks and being trained in those fields. So I do see in my work that there's a lot of vocational training that's given,
right,
just to see if the child who is transitioning into adulthood is able to conduct themselves in some sort of a work environment,
right,
whether that be bagging groceries as a simple task worker, cashiers, things like that. If they're able to
right,
do more, then they are able to do more and they're trained. And that's normally about, depending on how, you know, it depends on the child, obviously, the child to adult. It could take from 2 to 3 years. But I do see that the vocational training does end up helping the child transition into adulthood, because then they're able to do some sort of work. But then again, depending on the criteria and depending on the objective medical evidence, to see if they're able to do the work or not, then we make our decision based off of that.
Right. Okay. So that'll strictly be definitely different from each child to the next then.
Right.
But the training does help them. So that's something that we do, and we must keep in mind. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Well, if
Um,
anything, it gives them opportunity. I think that's the major stay here, or the major through line that I see, is that I think all that we're talking about is just the opportunity for education or opportunity for progression. And I think that that's sort of like the major through line that we can see through here.
Right. So thank you for that. I think that definitely needs to be there, and we have to keep in their individual needs and individual, strengths in mind to just sort of, take them further and give them those opportunities. Miss Sulekha, when we talk about, you know, we've talked about how the classroom, the inclusive classroom, can be beneficial to the students, but there are times when the challenging behavior does sort of create a kind of conflict as well. And how do you as an educator really deal with that, and how can you make the students really collaborate with each other and encourage positive relationships?
That is quite a big challenge, because but there has to be a solution also. And you can think of various solutions. What I would suggest is, probably the psychologist can have a session with the other children in the classroom, educate them about this child who's going to be in their classroom, talk about the diagnosis as such. If it is hearing impaired or visually challenged or autism or ADHD, talk about it in definite terms, so that the children don't end up calling this child weirdo or a dumbo. So talk in clear terms about what you have to expect, and probably uh, uh, I mean, in CADER, what we have is, we have something called a pupil profile. So that is basically for the staff there, but you can have something like that for the children, so that they would know what this child likes the most, or what would trigger difficult behavior in the child, or what kind of talk should be avoided in front of the child. All these things can be told or informed to the other children in the classroom before itself. So that would kind of reduce the kind of conflicts that we have. And you can think of things like finding buddies for this child. So you have two children volunteering during recess, lunchtime, to sit with the child and interact with the child. So the child, develops that kind of sense of belonging in the due course of time.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that definitely, just sort of spreading that kind of awareness and just educating them and giving them the knowledge, the power of knowledge, I would say would definitely help all our students and, the community to just sort of come together and work together. Talking about this, coming together and working together, Ms. Anuja, I would like to ask you, how are teachers and educators can really, come together? I've heard of something called co-teaching. What is that, and how does that really help, our students there?
That is really important, because our general education teachers, the regular school teachers, they need really a very good support from the special education teachers while dealing with the students with special needs. So working together as a team, even with the other related professionals, working as a team is very, very important for the good prognosis and also the well-being of the child with special needs. So Co-teaching is there is the concept is like the special education teacher or the teacher who is trained in helping the special needs child will also be present in the same classroom along with the child. Okay,
Right.
the teacher can sometimes assist the regular teacher or the other teacher who is teaching on the
Right.
same concept, like providing additional instructions to the child. Few of the children may need more and more instruction,
Right.
repetition of instructions, or sometimes they need the instructions to be made simple so that they can follow. So they can make all this happen when they are assisting the child. Sometimes, in certain cases, the special education teacher or may do some assessment in the behavior of the child, how he is behaving in an inclusive classroom. So what are the difficulties that the child is facing? So in that case, the teacher may not actively participate in the class, just make inferences which may help in the curriculum modification and the grading, like what we have discussed earlier. And in another case, it may be like teacher may divide the children. When they have two or more special needs kids, the teacher may divide it into one or two groups. The same
Right.
content the special education teacher may teach in a way that is appropriate for the special needs kid, and the
Right.
regular education teacher may teach the other children.
Right.
So that can also happen.
Right.
And also it can be sometimes the topics may also differ depending on the capability of children. That can also happen. And another one way they work as a team is like they all present on the same topic. It can be like improving socialization and all can happen in that. I can explain to you how. That is, they take one particular topic, maybe it is a novel or a poem, and they just one teacher may act out the poem or show some displays or some visual kind of things that the special needs children, that attract the special needs children, and the other other teacher can just read through in a very good, putting a lot of expressions and
Right.
intonations, so that it attracts not only the special needs children, also all the children. That makes the that learning experience very really good, very good for the children. So that requires a very good amount of patience and teamwork and very good understanding between the teachers. So this
Right.
is how teachers working as a team can. So in such classes where the teachers can work hand in hand, we can bring out wonders from the children with special needs.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that really is very useful, and a lot of the schools are definitely adopting that. And I've seen that in our school as well. And it's really important to talk about co-teaching because a lot of the times you see another teacher, and you see two teachers together, and you see one teacher helping one student a lot more than the others. So just to help them understand why this is necessary, and why, and to just help them be aware and be sensitive and sensitized towards this kind of awareness and knowledge of how this is essential and important for everyone to just really grow together and learn together. So thank you for helping us understand that better. Moving to Mr. Jason, you're working in the field of, you're working as a digital analyst, and we are seeing technology becoming more and more embedded with everything that we do these days. And you've heard about how technology is actually transforming the lives of people who are neuroatypical as well. So how does it really play a role in achieving better learning for them? And are there any recent innovations or advancements that can really help the students to break some of the learning barriers?
Yeah, I think an interesting point to bring up is how it's definitely helped with the assessment of some of these neuroatypical kids.
Right.
Definitely, like, because I'm currently in New York, so over here there's a lot of use of the iPad, and how sometimes like the kid might not be interactive in the context of like personal interaction, but then when it comes to the iPad, they're a bit more interactive. So then
Right.
even judging that gives us more of an idea of a holistic view of like what the kid is able to do. But I would actually ask that question to the teachers in the room, because I'm not actually a teacher, so I'm
Right.
wondering how in their classrooms
Right.
technology is being used. So I would
Right.
actually direct that to them.
So thank you for that. Definitely. Miss Sulekha or Miss Anuja, would either of you like to help us understand how, we can use technology to just sort of, help them learn better, or, is it actually really useful as well or not?
So I think I can talk from the communication part.
Right.
Communication, a lot of students, especially on the autism spectrum disorder, they are non-verbal. That means they don't have an oral speech output, but that
Right.
doesn't mean they don't have language. Some of them
Right.
surprises us with their capabilities in academics as well as their language abilities. So in
Right.
that case, some sort of a help so that they can communicate their ideas and their thoughts with us, that has to
Right.
be. So technology has provided a great way in that area. That is, there are we have both low tech and we call it alternate augmentative alternative communication, or AAC. When you have some kind, not only for autism spectrum disorder, in any age group, any individual who has difficulty in communication, we can use an augmentative alternative communication. Interestingly, though it is out of the topic, even the COVID-19 pandemic victims, the Philippine speech language pathologist has developed augmentative communication for them to communicate, because
Right.
they due to breathing difficulty, they can't come out with words. So that is the reach of the technology in the communication aspect. So what we use is like speech generating devices. There are Prologo, Tugo, or lamp, and all are in the dedicated devices that helps nonverbal persons communicate. And we have very good examples of persons who communicate using technology and come up in different areas of life. They have been successful. And also in iPad, we have different kinds of softwares like Avaz, which we can install. Avaz is an Indian software. We can install it and we can train them to come out with speech. In Kader
Right.
itself, we have a lot of children who use Avaz and communicate. And it is like when you see the first time they could communicate and come out with their ideas,
Right.
it's like so precious to see their expression.
Right.
And so that is the reach of technology in the area of communication. And also in the learning process, few of them, I would say most of them have difficulty with the fine motor skills, and the praxis issues are there.
Right.
So they can make use of technology even in writing exams, like typing, and typing to instead of writing in the exams. There are kids
Right.
who do typing well and pass the exam, even the board examinations. So that
Right.
is also one aspect of technology. Then what to say? Now we know in every areas, not only in every area we are making use of technology in this time of lockdown. Technology
Right.
has just risen up. So
Right.
that is good. And also like assistive, other types of adaptive and assistive devices also technology is providing. Now in AAC, I can say even the severe cerebral palsy kid who can only blink his or her eyes, even that kid, with the blinking of the eyes, we can capture it and put it into words. That
Right.
has happened. And we all know Stephen Hawkins, who
Right.
traveled throughout the universe with the use of augmentative alternative communication.
Right.
So that's how technology is helping our special needs kids.
Right. So I think definitely the advancements that it is making, it's really bringing out the best and best of the potential of our students, and we should be definitely looking at that area to just sort of get them to more productive and learn better and better. So with this, we've spoken so much about inclusive education, and we've learned so much, and we've understood it so much better. I would ask the participants if they have any questions for any of our speakers, they can write in the chat box, and we'll take that up. In the meanwhile, I would ask, Miss Anuja, if this field and the kind of work that you do, if that inspires any of our students or any of the participants who are listening here, how do they really get into this field, and how can they choose this as a career path if they'd want to get in this area, and what are some of the rewards and challenges of working in this field?
That is a good question. We are really, really lacking interested and expert professionals in this area. So the way is very simple. After their higher secondary board exams, they can apply for the various entrance exams for speech and hearing courses. It is known as Bachelor in Audiology and Speech Language Pathology course. They can apply here in Kerala. Nish is one of the premier institute conducting the course, and these other institutes are also there. And in Mysore, we have the All India Institute of Speech and Hearing. So we can apply in any one of the places. The notifications will be coming for regarding the entrance examination. They can write in entrance examination and simply get into. But my advice would be, if you are if you are really passionate or for the special needs kids, only if you have that patience and that dedication to work with them, you would opt. You cannot think this of just 10 to 5 job, because always your clients will be ringing behind your head, and you'll always be thinking about what next for them. So if you have that mind, then you are the real candidate for this.
Right. Thank you so much for helping us and just sort of guiding our students to this path. And if they're interested, if they're motivated, they can just definitely get into the field through some of the ways you've suggested. Ms. Sulekha, I would like to ask you, is there something that you'd like to share and tell our parents or teachers of from your experience of being a mentor as well as a parent yourself?
I think one thing that I would like to share is, there have been many instances in my life where I've gone to institutions and education institutions, and they've said, "Sorry, we're not equipped to take in your child." So I think you are never equipped enough. The only thing that you need to have is an open mindset. When it comes to dealing with, educating a child with special needs. So, I myself was not equipped. I was a 27-year-old young lady when I got my child with autism, and I couldn't say that, okay, let me just get prepared and then I'll take that. So you just look at the child in front of you as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old regular child. Who needs love and acceptance, and just need to look beyond the diagnosis, and that will help the child.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I think that definitely is something that all of us need to be actively looking at, and just keep an open mind and just sort of always be ready to just get in there and then just go from there. So thank you for that. There is another question, which one of our teachers asked, especially at a time like this, and Miss Anuja, you sort of mentioned that as well. Are there any tools that would help creating a more inclusive classroom, in an online learning environment or through like an online learning session, because more and more of your classes are becoming online, and just to make the environment a little more inclusive, is there something that our teachers can do? Would you help us with that? um,
Yeah, definitely. Because as we know, once the pandemic has come and there is complete lockdown, most of the
One second, Miss Anuja. Miss Sulekha, may I ask you to mute yourself so we can hear Miss Anuja better?
We have also done teletherapy. There is a concept called teletherapy or online sessions, in which the children are given sessions or therapy by the speech language pathologist and all the other fields, even the occupational therapist, everyone. But here it will be like a parent mediated intervention. Even at CADA, we are doing a parent mediated intervention. We had online sessions. We have pre-recorded videos that are going on. Um, so I think that has made the parents more well equipped. They started working. They are all with the children, and they started working with the kids. And now they can understand what are the capabilities of their child and what are the where all they are lacking and what all they have to do. So teletherapy is one option that is going on, but that there the parent has to take a more role, because when it is one to one in a clinic setting or in a school setting, we can just see the child and we can impart things directly to the child. But here it is not possible. So a lot of the time we'll have to ask the parent, or we'll be showing some virtual videos or virtual activities. Very wonderful activities are there for kids to engage, and since it is through the screen, all of them are interested as well. So that is there, but then parents have to take a greater role than previously. They have to take a greater role. But I think at CADA we find that parents are taking a very good effort, and even the parents who used to ask some very nitty-gritty doubts, they have come up with wonderful activities, and we should really appreciate. That is the power of online teaching that we see.
Right. So definitely, thank you for your suggestions and some of the things that our teachers as well as parents can also look into, to facilitate online learning better. So I would like Mr. Jason to just sort of add, any last words, to just sort of, you know, knit this whole talk together to how we can really bring a change in this field of inclusive education, and where how we can really support as governments, educators, parents, students, all of us just coming together to establish this culture of inclusion and champion equity.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was listening to everybody speak, and I think that there's sort of like a macro level thing that I want to say and a micro level. So the macro level and the micro level thing is about values and what kind of values we want to have in our society and the hierarchy of values. And I think that we need to have a shift towards valuing inclusion and valuing a diverse set of people within the classroom setting, rather than just overvaluing neurotypical people who can, do math the way, or who can, communicate the typical way that we're all used to. And I think we need to shift towards value-based education where there's a diversity of intellectual abilities in the classroom, and we have to figure out a way to mesh all of them together. I think on a societal level, it really does happen with us. It happens with you, it happens with me, it happens with everybody in this chat room, really in our own personal lives, thinking, okay, well, I want a classroom with a diverse set of people, of neuroatypical and typical people, And it's for ourselves valuing that within our own classroom settings, with our own kids, with our own nieces, nephews, whomever, and then hopefully that will cause gradual shifts within the society that eventually societally we will all value that type of education as well.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that was, again, really wonderfully put to just sort of value that kind of a system and that kind of a, system where everyone is just sort of together. Thank you all of speakers today to just, be here, give us your time and help us understand the field better, help us understand what it really means to, be part of an inclusive education system, and, how we can further, take it forward and meet the needs of every single person, not just neuroatypical students, but also neurotypical students, and how, all of us just sort of work together in that environment. I would ask Miss Sini now to just sort of, Miss Sini is from our SEN department, to just sort of thank all the speakers and, thank them for being here with us for this talk.
Thank you, Asta. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sini Thomas from Department of Special Education Needs, TRINS. I thank Ms. Solekha for beautifully explaining the importance of early intervention and inclusive education. Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Jason, I thank you for clearly describing the importance of parental and child emotions. As an educator, I come across similar situations where the parent denies to accept the difficulties in the child. Thank you so much, sir. Mrs. Anuja, I thank you for explaining the different styles of learning, barrier-free environment, and modification in the curriculum, and also for the career advice. I thank Ms. Asta for arranging this informative platform on discussing the nuances of inclusive education. I thank Sapnu, principal, and management for making this value addition possible. On behalf of entire TRINS fraternity, I thank all the parents and the participants for taking time to attend this webinar. Have a good weekend all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sini. All right, thank you all the participants again for being here and attending this talk. If you have any questions, if you can think of any questions later on, you can always email us, and we'll reach out to our speakers, and we'll try and help and help you with the answers and identify and just clarify your doubts there. Thank you so much for being here. Goodbye.